Hello, good morning. I'm going to speak here because of the recording, but the the place is small. I could do it without the microphone. Thank you for coming. Usually in these sessions about encryption, I don't expect to see too many people, only the most interesting people. I would like to first say that I'm not drunk. I just a bit sleep deprived for the last 3 days, so be patient with me. My name is Rodrigo Panchiniak Fernandes. I'm a Drupal developer for the last more than 10 years. In the last 5-6 years, I have been working with client-side encryption in Drupal. I have been giving some presentations about this in the last 5 years perhaps, in several Drupal camps and other IT events. But this is my first time in a DrupalCon. The text I submitted to propose this session had the word, more or less, you should use Openpgpjs. This is a choice of words that me as a attendee in an event would not attract me, because I don't feel comfortable when someone tells me what I should do. It's an option, not something required to do, right? So it's not very humble to use this, but it seems that in our area, people say this a lot, you should do this, you should do that. In reality, it's not like that. But to go with this idea, this presentation will try to tell you that everything you are doing is wrong by not doing this. Why? Because client-side encryption that protects the content against the site owner, against the system administrator, is the only way of really protecting the content from any possible leakage. Why? But this comes with a price. The biggest price is that you cannot recover a password. So if you encrypt the content with a zero knowledge proof schema, like this presentation will show, if the user loses the password and the password is not recorded anywhere, the content is lost forever. Unless this content can be re-encrypted by some other recipient of that same content. So this is also a subject that I would like to try to explain. Let's see. I have split the topics in this presentation in 3 parts. Let me try to move to the next. Okay. So this is very simple summary of what comes ahead. There are some technical topics, some political ones, and those that I like most, the mathematical, that are related to the number theory. These are the most interesting ones. But this session is called a workshop, and it would not be a workshop if I did not show you some coding, right? So this is what comes first. I want to show these small pieces of JS code that do most of is being proposed here. It's not much. And this is the detailed of the technical topics. So we are using RSA encryption. So we do generation of the keys. Then this is a asymmetrical schema, but with a symmetrical encryption of the private key. And this is the second topic, symmetric encryption and decryption of private keys. Then, and this is the more the part that relies most into Drupal, selection of recipients embedded in fields. But this approach could be, it goes beyond Drupal, could be used in any kind of web development technology. Then asymmetric encryption and decryption of content. Obviously, this is the main idea. And finally, what I was saying before, update of encrypted content. That is something that is needed if someone loses or renews someone receives a file, encrypted file or encrypted text, whatever, and this person that was a recipient, he renews his encryption keys. So you have now a new public key. So the public key you had before that was used to encrypt is not going to be useful anymore for the now because you have a new one. So you lost that content. A solution for this is decrypt and encrypt again. So someone who has received that piece of content, if there is at least one person that still has access to it, this single person can save the entire group. Now, and these are the technical topics, but before jumping into them, I want to come here to the political topics as well. This is, for me, more appealing than the technical one, because the technical topics, you go through the documentation of Openpgpjs, because this is what is being used here, and you learn it by the example, so it's not a big challenge. The details are complex. Sometimes it's hard to fulfill the details, but the main idea is simple. But this is what really makes difference in the community, for the world, is the certain kind of political view of what is the ownership of the content. And I think we are doing it wrong. And finally, and this is what I like the most, number theory topics. Because all of this only works based in this very amazing behavior of the numbers, and especially the prime numbers. Because we cannot predict the next prime number. And why we cannot predict, and we cannot prove, we cannot predict the next prime number. So it's an open question that takes us to the Riemann hypothesis. So, and this is why you were listening to this annoying music in the beginning. Let me play it a little bit more for those that came later. This is a kind of a music that is a musical representation of a sequence of numbers. And this sequence of numbers you can find in a very nice encyclopedia that I will do a survey here to let's see. Please, hands up who knows Wikipedia? Everyone. Now, please hands up who knows the online encyclopedia of integer sequences. No one. So, this is interesting. Perhaps already something that you can bring home, some knowledge that you can bring home if you are interested in number theory or in science in general. Because many Wikipedia articles will have links to the online encyclopedia of integer sequences. So most of the every place in science where a sequence of numbers is important, probably that sequence of numbers is already encoded here. And if you come to find a sequence of numbers that is not here, you can propose it. So this encyclopedia allows you to search with the numbers of your sequence. So you can have the from the start or in the middle, and it will try to match that sequence. Also, you can search here by the name of the person who found the sequence. And that one that I was playing, I found it. So if I look for my own name, I find it here. And it is, it's a bit hard to follow the explanation because it's not only number theory mathematics, but it also follows a certain pattern of a way to describe the mathematical properties that is defined by the editors of this encyclopedia. So when you find a sequence, you have to propose it, and then there is it looks like a Drupal issue queue of editing and making that and try better. So it can take a certain time. So you can see here all the discussion that happened until the final shape of the sequence. And this you can put some here. I have proposed a JS code because this is what I knew with this notation of big integers. And this small piece of code is going to generate the sequence of numbers and the music you were listening before. My friends are here. I thought they would not come. Thank you for coming. They are my closest friends in the event. I thought not even they would come. So, but as I was saying, not too many people comes, but the most interesting people comes, right? So now back to the presentation. So this is more. I have more. I like the most the number theory topics than the other ones, but as I was saying, I'm going. This is a workshop, so we need to go through some coding. So let me start by the beginning. In summary, what it will look like for the final user is just that the content is behind a password. And bigger is the password, safer it is against a brute force attack. So the schema, this schema is asymmetric because it has a public key and a private key, but the private key is going to be stored encrypted in the server. So the original private key, we never saw it. It was never submitted. And the password the person has used to encrypt the private key, we never received it as well. So these fields that are by the way, the strength of the password that we are using here is not very good. This should not, how strong the password is should be represented by how long it takes to brute force find it. But this is not going to be submitted. It's only what goes submitted is the encrypted version of the private key. So usually generates a pair of asymmetric keys, RSA 2048, or even better, double that by typing asymmetric decryption password for the protection of his private key. The password filled in the form is never submitted. This is what I was saying. Now, a little bit of JS code that is handling the Openpgpjs. This is the main object here, Openpgp. You have to load the library. There are some settings here. And we have a method generate key, and that's it. You need some input to generate the key. That is, you need a string, right? It could be any other string, but the email is usually used. So it's here, email, a name, and the password. The password that the person has typed. This here is hard coded. The size, it should be already double this. Now, if you want to use for decryption, then once you did that, your account, the account of the user is related to a public key and the encrypted version of the private key. The public key is going to be used by someone who wants to send you something. And the private key, the encrypted version of the private key is going to be used by yourself for decrypting a content received. So, there is this intermediary step for decrypting something that is using the password that only you know. It's only recorded in your brain. And this is important for this schema, is the password should never be stored anywhere, and only in your brain is the preferred media. Then this is Openpgp version 5. You have this read private key, and then you loaded the encrypted version of the private key from the server, and then you can decrypt key, and that's it. Now, once you have decrypted your private key, the next step for the decryption itself is to use the decrypted private key. But before that, when someone was sending the content to you, what is needed? The public keys of the recipients. In Drupal, and this is Drupal 7, but this could be replicated in any version of Drupal and even beyond Drupal. You can define, for example, a view that's going to list some users, for example, my friends, for whom I want to send something. So I could have in a form several fields, each field encrypting content for different users. So the sky is the limit. You can do whatever you want. You can also have, I have a list of my friends, but some friends like music, other friends like sports, and I want to decrypt content, different contents for each of those subgroups of friends. I could handle this with views and passing arguments to the view to return a different set of users with a different set of public keys. Now, once these public keys have been selected, I can start encrypting the content for those persons. And this is what happens here, Openpgp encrypt. Yeah, it has also this create message method that is for the version 5 of Openpgpjs. And after encrypted, the person wants to decrypt, what means for the final user just typing exactly the same password the user used when creating the keys. And when this is done, a message is going to be decrypted. Here is ciphertext, is the text representation in armored format of the file or text or whatever content was encrypted. and there is this decrypt method, and the decrypted private key is used. So this came from the previous step we were talking before. Now, update of encrypted content. This is a bit challenge because you have, for example, a group of users and they need to receive certain content. But in a community platform, always users are coming in and leaving the platform or moving from one group to another. So frequently, the list of recipients of a content becomes outdated. So what can be done is this concept of updating encrypted content. That means re-encrypting it. How we can do it? If at least one person still has access to that content, this person can trigger the decryption of that content and the re-encryption of the same content, now adjusted to the most up-to-date list of recipients. And this is a kind of maintenance that it works better if it's automated. And to automate this, in my opinion, the best way is like the poor man's Chrome, the concept, meaning every time a person decrypts something, the system will try to find if there is some outdated content that person has access. And therefore, by typing the password to decrypt your content, behind the scenes you are also updating content to other people. So this is a way of doing, keeping the privacy schema as strong as possible. So this is the first step is you have to decrypt something, and then you introduce your decryption password. Then the system needs to find if new recipients are needed for that content, and then re-encrypt it. And this is the two ways. Sometimes you want to add new users, sometimes you want to remove old users, but it's doable. It's a bit hard, but it's doable. Now, political topics, the way I see, we should be doing this by default. We are not owners of the content of our users. So if the sysadministrator, the DevOps team, if they can access something, it means the content does not really belong to the persons it should belong to. Client-side encryption is hard, but it's the only known way to keep data really connected to the intended recipients. Then, what we could do even for the anonymous user, there is something that we can do. Because this pretty good privacy schema also contains signatures. We can sign content. In signing, cryptographical signing means that the person who created the content cannot deny that action. This is the idea. The signature is against the person who signed it. So, if, for example, if I want to spread fake news, but I'm required to sign, the content becomes traceable. So this is also a strong way of killing fake news, or making it easier to detect the origin of certain of a content. So we could, for example, adopt a very weak, the most weak private key and give access to this private key to everyone. This is a bit weird concept because the private key should not be public, right? But we can do this. We can define a private key for the anonymous user. And then if we want to publish a content without restriction of access, I could encrypt that content to the anonymous user, okay? And then every anonymous access will have by default access to that key and will be able to see the content. Now, if this comes together with enforced signature, all the public content would always be traceable back to the author. For me, it's a bit amazing that these concepts, they exist since the 60s, and we are not using it, and the society is being harmed by not having this yet. It's amazing. Now, number theory topics. This is what I like the most, as I said before. All of these, the RSA schema comes from this amazing property of numbers that is, I hope it's simple to explain. You pick two prime numbers, you multiply them. This is easy to do, but you have the product of those numbers. You want to find which were the two numbers that were used to get the product. This is not easy to do. So it's easy to go from to one side to another, but it's not easy to reverse this function. It's like breaking an egg. It's easy to break an egg, but once you have the egg broken, it's very hard to put the pieces in the original state that it had. Prime numbers, they have a algebraic definition that is based on division, right? So a prime number can be divided by itself and by 1 without anything left. But this is, it's not my preferred way of understanding a prime number. I like to think about prime numbers geometrically. So if you cannot make a shape without any hole on it, certain shapes, then you have a prime number. So, for example, let's take the first example. If we don't consider 1, we don't consider 2 because it's a bit artificial prime number, but let's jump into 3, the number 3. If you have 3 squares, okay, and you want to align these 3 squares, I can put the 3 squares one at the side of the other, so 3 divided by 3. Or I can put the 3 squares one at the top of the other, it's 3 divided by 1. Okay, now, can I put 2 squares below and 1 above? I have a hole at the side. So the numbers where you have a hole are the prime numbers. Interesting behavior. And this is amazing because it's an unknown behavior of something that is totally arbitrary. So the natural numbers, sometimes called unassigned integers, but I like most the concept of natural numbers. They are one very basic how can I say, they are they were created or they were invented, right? Perhaps you can see them as created, as discovered, or as invented. But anyway, they are something very simple. But even though we don't know all the properties of the natural numbers. And one property is we cannot predict the next prime number. Ah, time, okay. So, and because we cannot predict the prime numbers, it's not doable to revert a public key into the original prime numbers that generated it. And the prime numbers that generated the public key, they make the private key. And this is the only reason why asymmetric encryption works. Now that the time is going, I want to show a difference of what. So first, I was showing this music. This is avoiding prime numbers, but because it is avoiding prime numbers, it's kind of connected to prime numbers as well. And you see that this is not random, but at the same time you cannot predict which sound will come. It's very interesting, and it's different from something that is really random. I can show. Now this is random. For me, it sounds better the previous one than this, but I think this depends on the person. Well, I hope I have given you some new information, something that will stimulate you to learn more later about this subject. Thank you for your patience and attention. I have to open for questions, right? So. No questions, okay, thank you.
How do you like my sweet potatoes?
Oh my goodness. Sweet potatoes, and then you got chestnuts here as well.